Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Amanda with the Content Marketing Institute. How happy to see all of you this afternoon for our latest episode of Live with CMI. And as you can see, I am here by myself. My co-host and colleague, JK, he is working in London this week. In fact, he sent me a little video. So he took time out of his very busy schedule to send me a video. So let's take a look and see what JK is up to.
Hey there, it's JK. I am so very sorry that I can't be there with you, Amanda. I'm here in lovely London doing a bunch of work with this Informa team, having a great time, meeting a lot of great people, and I'm going into a heavy meeting right now. So I will talk to you soon.
Heavy meeting. He's working really hard there in London, apparently working real hard. So anyway, I am super excited to be here with all of you and my awesome guest today, Brianna Doe, to chat about influencer marketing. I will bring her on in a minute, but first, as always, I want to remind you, in case you didn't know, this live stream is brought to you by the Content Marketing Institute. We are the leading training and education organization for all things content and marketing. And as always, you can head over to contentmarketinginstitute.com for tons of great resources over there. We have research, we have articles, videos, all kinds of great stuff. So check it out. And as always, as you join us today, please say hello. Give me a virtual wave. Let us know where you're joining us from. It always makes for a more engaging live stream when we hear from all of you. So please drop that in the comments. And as always, when you have questions or comments about what we're chatting about today, drop it in the comments as well. And I will try to get to them as best as I can. All right, let's get started here. Back to our awesome guest. Our sister brand at Work released a report on what is working in creator and influencer marketing. And they found $32 billion was spent on creator influencer marketing last year. And 61% of marketers plan to increase their spend on influencer marketing this year. So needless to say, it is not going away anytime soon. So that's why we have Brianna Doe with us today. She's the founder and CEO of Verbatim, an agency specializing in influencer marketing. She's a host of the podcast and newsletter Stop the Scroll and the author of a new book, Unapologetic Professional. So good to have you today, Brianna.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Also, that video made me laugh out loud.
He was working, so I wish I was working in London today too. We're here. So, well, let's start with this, Brianna. When it comes to the state of influencer marketing in 2026, what, in your perspective, is new or changed? What are you seeing so far this year?
I am seeing, similar to that report that you shared, I'm seeing a lot more brands that are excited about testing it. I think, over the last, I would say 5 years, when I think about the B2B brands that I've worked with, both in-house and as an agency, there's been a lot more hesitation in general, right? We want to try this, but we can only give you a tiny budget, or we need to prove it out to our, leadership team first. And while there is still that validation phase, and that's very important, I'm seeing more brands that are genuinely excited to try this and are already seeing how it's working for their competitors and, just their peers. I think that's really exciting. And I also think with that comes a lot of room for more standardization within this space. It's really hard to nail down elements of this, both as a creator and as a brand. How much do I charge? How much should I budget for my influencer programs? So I'm really excited to have more of those conversations and see how brands tackle it.
Yeah, I was going to say it's probably been a little bit of a Wild West out there, right? When it comes to payment and contracts and expectations and stuff. So how do brands go about finding creators to work with? Like, maybe what are some red flags also to look for if you're looking for a creator?
Okay, so the first thing I would actually say before you even start looking for red flags or green flags is make sure you have a very clear definition of success that you've aligned on with both like your immediate marketing team and the broader organization. you want to make sure that your influencer campaign or program is laddering up to the business outcomes. And why I say that is because that's then going to also inform which channels you're leaning into and leveraging. So let's say you decide you want to run a brand awareness campaign. And so you're really focused on driving a lot of reach and a lot of engagement. You're probably going to work with slightly different creators than you would if you were looking for like a really niche audience or to drive strictly conversions. So understand what success looks like in that regard, because then you can narrow down your search for creators. That being said, what I'd recommend in terms of, looking for red flags are a couple of things, like really a lot of ads, like a lot of sponsored content. And it's kind of a chicken and the egg situation because it's creators will work with brands that they like and that they want to partner with. And you never know, what their reasoning is behind that. But you also don't want to be just another brand in a sea of brands on their feed. So make sure that the brands that they're partnering with also align with your values. Make sure you're comfortable being placed next to one of those or two of those on their feed. I'd also recommend that you look at their content as a whole. So does their content, aside from sponsored content, align with your values, the way you want to be perceived online, the things that you want your audience to associate you with? I think, I see a lot of brands that are excited about a creator because they have a lot of followers or a lot of engagement, but there really isn't that connection like between the brand and the creator. And the final red flag I'd also recommend looking into is engagement quality. So I always tell not just our clients, but anybody I am nerding out with about influencer marketing, high engagement rate is super important. But what is that engagement actually? Is it a lot of, nice posts, like love your content, like those kind of comments? Or does this creator have the ability to spark like real conversations, real discourse, real engagement in their comment sections? That I would say is even more important than just an engagement rate.
Because I didn't put this in the questions, but I learned this from you when I interviewed you at Content Marketing World was engagement pods, right? That's what they're called. Like I had no idea what that was. So can you just give a explanation of what those are?
Yeah, the bane of my existence is what they are. So there are a couple different kinds of engagement pods, but the simplest way I can explain it is, let's say I am a creator and I essentially pay money to join this community of sorts so that every time I post, whatever the channel is, every time I post, it sends like a flood of engagement to that new piece of content. So it's manufactured engagement. Mm-hmm. There are also, elements to this or options where you're not paying for it, but it is still an engagement pod. And the problem really is kind of what I alluded to. It's manufactured engagement. So my audience demographics aren't really accurate. The engagement isn't real. A brand partner that I work with could see really high engagement and absolutely no results outside of that. But that being said, it's also a fine line because you have creators who just have really good friends that comment on their posts. And so I think that's why engagement quality is so important, to see if you see that blend of like engaged comments and, the one-off nice post.
Or if they have, I'm assuming like a lot of bots that follow them or comment on their posts, which is also kind of hard to find sometimes, but for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and you'll see that too. Like you bring up a good point. People can also buy followers. Yeah. So if you see like an Instagram account with 700,000 followers and they're averaging like 10 likes per post, yes, like engagement can shift. Maybe they're in a dry period, but usually that's a sign that you've bought followers.
Yeah. Those are all things like you just have to spend time, right? Mm-hmm. Vetting those creators. So how do you actually build a creator relationships that go beyond those just one-off posts, so you can find consistent value? Because yes, I've seen those, you'll see the sponsored ad and it's like a one-time post and they're up there. So how can you sort of, create a little more valuable, consistent relationship?
I love that you asked this because I think, there are obviously some wins that come with doing a one-off post. You aren't committing to a longer partnership, so there's less risk in that sense. But you're also not giving the partnership time to develop. You're not giving the content creator or the content they're creating time to be refined, and see what's working and see what's not with the audience. And so when we talk about a longer term partnership, you do not need to commit to like a 12-month agreement upfront, or even 6 months or 3 months. What I typically recommend is start with no less than 3 posts with a creator, maybe, broken out across a couple months, and then renew and scale from there. And I think it's important to note that most creators don't want to have like this, ever changing roster of brand partners. They want to start building those longer term relationships. And so the best way to do this to set both yourself and the creator up for success goes back to what I said already about defining success, but then also sharing that with the creator. What are you looking to accomplish? What goals are you optimizing towards? How does this campaign or post or partnership ladder up to those business outcomes that I was alluding to? Because that's going to give the creator the parameters and the information they need to craft content that will actually resonate and work with their audience. And that just makes a world of difference. And I will say too, tactically speaking, a campaign brief is great. If you're not familiar with that, it's essentially where you outline anything related to the campaign objectives, who your audience is or who your target audience is, along with any messaging guidelines. Like, we, don't want you to speak like this. You can use words like this. Kind of depends on your industry, but any parameters you can give them without like locking them into a, specific post or specific messaging.
So going along with that is, how can you make sure the content that they're creating is authentic or feels authentic and aligns with your brand and your brand values?
Yeah, that's the campaign brief is going to solve a lot of that, especially because you have to build that campaign brief before you start working with creators. So you're going to sit down with your team or your manager or whoever and get clear on what that is supposed to look like. You will understand internally how you do want creators to talk about your brand, how you do want to be perceived, the messaging that you do want them to communicate or articulate to their audience. So you'll be doing a lot of work to figure all that out before you even talk to the creators, which I think is incredible. And I want to make sure I reiterate, like, the goal of the campaign brief is not to dictate exactly what the creator says. It's to remove any ambiguity around your messaging and around your brand so that they can then create content that's authentic and on brand, but also aligns with your brand values. The more you can like go to either end of the spectrum, you can give them no guidance and then they're kind of confused and come up with anything that works, or you can try and dictate everything they say, and that's also going to come off salesy. So finding your way to the middle is the sweet spot.
This was also not in there, but I saw some funny video memes or whatever about working with creators, and it was like, the creator does it, and then there's like 50 changes, and then it keeps going back, but they need it by the end of the day, and like the expectations are just kind of unrealistic, I guess, when working with influencers.
Yeah. It's funny. I don't know if I'm laughing as an agency owner, as a creator, or if I'm trying not to cry, but yes, like it happens so often. And I'm still trying to figure out what that is. I think there's just a fear around letting the creator kind of figure it out. I mean, there are elements of influence marketing that are very similar to traditional advertising, right? You're investing money in this channel, so on and so forth, but you can't control it the way you do, Google ads or LinkedIn ads. Like, you have to give them space to create the content that resonates with their audience. That's why you wanted to work with them. So when you take away that autonomy, the campaign is just going to suck. I'm sorry.
Yeah. It is, like you said, and it's like, I guess, letting go of some of that control, but like things are a little different, and everyone's pretty savvy enough to know when something is a manufactured ad. Like, we all know, like, when we're watching our favorite creators, and I know when it's an ad, but I feel less I don't know, like, ew about it when I'm like, trust this creator and it feels like an authentic post because they really use the product or they really tried it, and it's coming from them and not from, you can tell from the sales folks. It really does make a difference.
Agreed. Makes a huge difference.
Let's chat a bit about measurement, because everyone loves that, right? So when it comes to influencer marketing, what should marketers be tracking to prove the ROI of a creator campaign? And how can you sort of spot authentic engagement versus, any sort of inflated or fake metrics they might give you?
That's a great question. So first and foremost, I typically recommend that you have your primary metrics and your secondary metrics, or KPIs. So, like what I was saying earlier about, let's say you were running a brand awareness campaign. Obviously, you'd be tracking the standard things like impressions, reach, etc. But the rest of the data is also going to tell a story, right? Not just how many clicks you got on the content, but what happened with people that were engaging with the content. Where did they go? How did they engage with the brand? So on and so forth. I'll give a really clear example. Let's switch it and say that your campaign objectives are tied around conversions. So you're trying to drive booked demos. So the main or primary KPIs you'd be tracking are related to that, right? Leads that come in, demos booked, but you don't want to ignore the rest of the data. So your secondary KPIs would probably be tied to engagement on the content, impressions and reach, and then the audience demographics around that. What you're trying to do is essentially tell a more comprehensive or holistic story, both to your team and to leadership, about the ROI. Because let's say the campaign doesn't go as well as you'd hope, you don't drive a ton of conversions, but you do get an astronomical level of qualified traffic to the site. That would then tell me it's not that influencer marketing isn't working. There's something off from when an audience member goes from the content to the website. Like, is it the messaging? Is it the funnel itself? Is there another step that needs to be added in? Whatever it is. But when you're tracking all of that data, you're able to tell that story more clearly. I like to say too, I mean, that's the thing with influencer marketing. Like I said, it's not like a traditional ad channel. And so you need to make sure you're tracking all of that, so you can continue to prove the ROI, even if you can't prove it with a specific campaign. And to answer the other part of your question around, authentic traffic or engagement versus inauthentic, it's really going to depend on, there are two elements, right? There's the engagement on the post itself or the posts, and then there's also the engagement on the back end, whatever you're tracking from an analytics perspective. Make sure you have those parameters in place on the back end. Like, I don't know, if you use heat mapping or different types of, apps or platforms that let you dig into who's visiting the site or the landing page or downloading the asset. On the content creator side, always, always, always make sure you are getting analytics after the post or posts go live. I'd recommend putting into your contracts as well so that it's required. But 7-day analytics, 30-day analytics, and if you're feeling adventurous, 60 days, but some creators do push back on that. But you'll be able to see the immediate results versus what's happening maybe after 30 days and get everything like post performance, impressions, engagement, audience demographics. If they can get that data, all of that is going to help you as you're figuring out your next steps.
Awesome. All great info there. Can you share some examples that you've seen that, some brands that are winning with these type of influencer marketing campaigns, maybe B2B and B2C?
Yeah, my favorite topic. So I'll start with B2C. One thing to note, I think the brands that are doing this really well are the ones that can both integrate into like existing cultural moments or trends, and also the ones that can create moments that don't feel inauthentic. So this was last year, but I think an incredible example was NYX or NYX. I'm never entirely sure how to say it, but the makeup brand. For any Love Island fans, I mean, I'm obsessed. But there was a couple on Love Island, Nick and Alandria, who just like took the world by storm. Everybody loved them. And by the time they left the villa on Love Island, NYX had already secured a partnership with them, like related to specific funny things that were said during the show. That's an example of like parachuting into an existing cultural moment instead of trying to create it. And I think that's important. It's not just who's hot right now, but what about them are people connecting to and relating to. And I think another great example for any animal lovers, Casper, the mattress company, they released like this line of, luxury dog beds. And, they posted about it online, they updated the website, but they also invited creators who like centered their content around their animals to this private like steak dinner launch party, and then had them create content around that. And so the reason I'm sharing like these kind of non-traditional examples is because you can always go the traditional route and do just sponsored posts. They do work. but I think it's really important to note that there are ways to integrate into your audience's world and just become part of the experience instead of trying to manufacture it. And with the B2B side, a couple brands, Notion does this really well. Teachable does this extremely well. Um, and Sprout Social, I would say as well. Those three all do a mix of traditional sponsored content on LinkedIn and other channels, but they also do like offline events and experiences. So they'll host micro dinners and co-host them with creators, or they'll sponsor an event and have members of their team attend it. And so finding ways to integrate into those experiences, I think that's the future for influencer marketing.
Do you find is B2B primarily on LinkedIn, like creators still, or is it kind of cross platform?
I love that you asked this. LinkedIn is a great channel for B2B, and we do see a lot of brands on there, but I always like to say that is not the only channel that your B2B audience lives on. They exist on other channels. They follow other creators. They have favorite podcasts. And so we also see B2B brands and encourage them to be on, YouTube, especially for longer form content, TikTok, depending on your, industry or niche, and Instagram is a huge one as well. So that goes back to what I said originally too, like understanding who you're trying to target and what success looks like, because you might actually find that maybe only 20% of our budget should go to LinkedIn and 80% should go to like Instagram and YouTube, but understand like who your audience is and who they trust and engage with, and then craft your strategy accordingly.
Yeah, I find it really interesting because I think I'm surprised more brands aren't doing influencer marketing, because just from like a consumer perspective, there are certain creators I follow that are in the same space, and I see them across like doing the same ads for the same couple of companies, but I trust all of those creators, right? Because I'm following their content, but I'm seeing that message from these different people over and over. Like, I just think like that to me is, I wouldn't have seen that on an ad. I wouldn't have seen that kind of advertisement. I just think like people just aren't diving into influencer marketing yet. Like the power of that to me just seems like it has to be great for those brands using that way.
It is great. And you have to be willing. I mean, you make such a great point. Like you have to be willing to let your team and your creators experiment with the types of content. Like if you choose to try influencer marketing, you are unlocking a really cool opportunity to test out different messaging, test out different like voices or types of content without shifting like your own brand voice. So take advantage of that. Like you don't have to, go crazy with it, but take advantage of that. Like leverage different channels, leverage different creators, choose creators that are even adjacent to your industry. It doesn't need to just be specifically in your industry. Like I think it's so exciting and it's such a cool space to experiment and test. And the more that comes through too, both to the creators you partner with and to your audiences, the more you let them experiment and do their thing with the guidelines and parameters that will set them up for success. I mean, the more authentic the content will be.
And just creators are looking to make that money, right? Creators are they would love to, make some money to work with brands. So they're out there willing too. It's just, so take advantage of it. I think.
No, agreed. I completely agree. And I think that's also a great point. Like they're looking to make that money and they're also looking to not have to find new brand partners every 3 weeks. So if you can set both of you up for success and create these longer term partnerships, like your audience is just going to get more and more comfortable with this brand being mentioned, and it'll feel less and less like an ad.
I think that's key too. Yeah. The more I see these brands from my creators over and over again, I'm like, okay. And quite honestly, I finally made a purchase because I was like, okay, I was seeing them and I was like, okay, I checked it out a couple of times and then I finally made that purchase. So that is something that I would never have done with an ad or commercial or whatever. So as we wrap up, this is a great conversation, but as we wrap up today, what's one thing you want people to sort of take away about all this influencer marketing and working with creators?
If you forget everything else. I just hope you remember that while there are elements of influencer marketing that are similar to traditional advertising, you have to give both the program or the campaign like time to grow. You have to give yourself time to refine your messaging and your approach and even which creators you're partnering with. So as you're looking at the data, from your campaign performance, look at the most obvious data, right? Like impressions, conversions, et cetera. And also look at what the other data is telling you. Like a campaign might look like a failure, but the learnings that you gained from it will completely shift the way you approach the next campaign. So look at the data as a whole and give your creators time to experiment with you.
Awesome. And have that strategy first. Don't just dive
Yes.
in, right?
Have a strategy and a
I'm
brief.
gonna work on the screen and see how it goes. That's not going to be good.
No.
Well, thank you so much for all of this, Brianna. How can people, find you, connect with you? We talked a little bit about your book, your new book that came out. You want to talk about that?
Yes. So I just had a book come out last year called The Unapologetic Professional. It's essentially about navigating imposter syndrome, learning how to approach your career in a way that feels sustainable and authentic to you, and redefine success for yourself. And I break it down with a lot of tips, tricks, and personal experiences. So if you want to pick up a copy of that, you can find it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And then outside of that, you can find me on LinkedIn. I basically live on there. So if you ever have any questions about influencer marketing, feel free to reach out. My agency, we are verbatim.com. And then, like you mentioned, Amanda, my podcast and newsletter just relaunched. So if you want to learn more about decoding virality on the internet or influencer marketing, you can check out Stop the Scroll on Substack.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge and wisdom with us today. I really appreciate it. And thanks you to all of you for joining us. If we didn't get to a question there, we will go back and get it. So have a great day, Brianna. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, that was awesome. So yeah, we dropped some links in the comments there where you can find Brianna's book and how to connect with her as well. So we have a lot of other exciting things happening here at CMI to tell you about. And one of those things is we need your help. So every year we produce a content and marketing career and salary survey based on what all of you are telling us about what's happening out there in the marketing industry. So we cannot do it without help from awesome professionals like you. We truly value your perspective on marketing roles, salaries, expectations, how they're shifting. So if you wouldn't mind sharing your insights with us, it takes just the 10 minutes, maybe do it over your lunch hour, completely anonymous. You can scan the QR code here to find the link to the survey. And we want to let you know that registration is officially open for Content Marketing World 2026. We're super excited to be in Denver this year, October 5th through the 8th. So you can head over to contentmarketingworld.com, get those super early bird rates locked in. We'd love to see you there. And speaking of a content marketing world, we are also looking for some super awesome speakers to take the stage. Brianna, who we just had, she was on the stage last year. So if you would like to join her and some of our other speakers, if you think you've got what it takes, please consider applying today. We're always looking for fresh faces, perspective, and new case studies to showcase to our awesome attendees at Content Marketing World. We'll drop those links in as well. And finally, a reminder that we're still accepting applications to our mentorship program. You have until this Friday, February 28th. It's truly a great program that we are super proud of. So if you are a young professional in the content or marketing world and would like to find a great mentor to work with, we would love to have you in our program. So fill out that form. We'll drop all of those links in the comments as well. So thank you all so much for joining me today. I know JK couldn't be here, super busy in London. So we will be back next month for another great episode. Until then, thank you all for joining us, and hopefully you have a great day and the rest of your week.